And welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast for Friday, September the 27th. Today, we are previewing Saints at Falcons. Week 4 is here. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris. And we're going to dig into the matchup, the rivalry game. We're going to see who takes a 56-55 lead in the all-time Saints-Falcons series.
That's how Dennis Allen's going to be firing him up this weekend, man.
It's pretty incredible. 110 meetings, and they've each won 55.
Yeah, well, I think the Falcons took the early lead, and then the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era, I think they got quite a few back. So, but it's been really back and forth the last couple of years. I guess it's been since what, it's a 22 season opener. I think Dennis Allen's first game as a head coach, they beat the Falcons in Atlanta. I think that was the last time they beat him there.
Yeah, on a blocked field goal, right?
Right. I remember Dennis Allen after that game was like, I hope they're not all like this. And it's like, actually, you kind of wish they all were like that.
By the way, that game sparked a $100,000 NFL Survivor run for somebody that you know. Picking the Saints, and they survived in Atlanta.
I hope you've done something good with that money, my man.
Yeah, I have a new air conditioner. All right. Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to Bank Anywhere technology, maybe help you with a $100,000 win. I probably could have been smarter with that money had I talked to Bank Plus.
You probably could have.
Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll start our breakdown of Saints Falcons. Be back in 60 seconds.
Fellas, it's clear why Caesars brought us together. This is the ultimate quarterback roundtable.
I think I know why we're here.
What? Quarterback, high school, Oklahoma?
I thought that was a musical.
Garth, I think you're here because when people use Caesars Sportsbook, they earn with Caesars rewards. Things like celebrity chef dining, Vegas vacations, even tickets to your show.
This app is over the top. There's the idea.
Bet with Caesars Sportsbook. Earn Caesars rewards and see your favorite quarterback, Garth Brooks, in concert.
Hey, you can't throw like that.
All right, Saints Insider for Friday, September the 27th. Let's break down Saints Falcons. Rod, we talked about kind of the craziness of this rivalry, and this week seems no less crazy. Both teams kind of coming off heartbreaking losses. The Saints lose that game, as we've talked about all week, late to the Eagles. The Falcons, I don't know if it's hard to compare heartbreaking losses, but they had a pass interference call that wasn't called in the end zone against the Chiefs on Sunday night. Couldn't win that game. They had a couple chances. And so both teams are kind of stewing on that all week. And to boot, they have a bunch of injuries, too.
Yeah, both teams losing their center last week is kind of crazy, when you think about it. But, yeah, this is going to be a really good game for either team. Whoever wins this game is in a really good, not really good position, but, you kind of getting a leg up in the division. And both teams trying to get back on track. So just really looking forward to seeing this matchup because these are just two teams that, we all know what happened last season, the last season of the game the last game of the season when the Saints scored the extra, the Jamal Williams touchdown. And, so you want to see if any of that carries over. The Saints players are kind of downplaying it, and I don't know what the Falcons players are saying about it, but I'm sure they haven't forgot about it.
If I was the Saints, I'd be downplaying it. Yeah. I keep coming back to thinking about how the division's played out the last couple of years, with the Saints being in it in Week 18 and needing some stuff to happen. And a lot of the reason they've needed some stuff to happen is because they lost to Atlanta twice in Atlanta. They had both kind of winnable games. Last year they just completely imploded in the red zone and ended up. I don't think they scored a touchdown in that game, kicked a bunch of field goals, and they lost by single digits.
Outgained them by 100 yards and still lost by two possessions.
Right. Derek Carr threw a pick six from his own or from the Atlanta 6-yard line, something like that. And then the season before, they had a similar kind of loss in Atlanta, and then you start getting into tiebreaker stuff, and the Falcons already have a little bit of a leg up in the Saints and tiebreakers, and an important one beating Philly. That's a head-to-head record. So I mean, this is this is important for so many reasons. It's important to kind of get the vibes back on track after kind of a disheartening loss last week. But like, if you're starting to look at how this division might play out, if the Falcons are going to kind of achieve what a lot of us thought they could at the start of the year, it'd be great to get them in a 1-3 hole. It would be great to get that head-to-head advantage to where you could get it like to be a full 2-0 advantage later in the season when you're playing them. It's just a really important game for a lot of different reasons.
And like Rod said, either team would be in good position. Matt, that's especially true for the Saints because if they win, they're 3-1. Atlanta's 1-3, and you've got, at worst, you're going to split the head-to-head, and you've got the return game at home. So they could really, the Bucs are there as well, but you could really start to tighten your grip on this division if you win this game.
You could, and it's especially important for Atlanta because they play the Bucs on Thursday Night Football the following week. So if you're creating, that's a losable game for them as well. So you're potentially staring at 1-4 if you lose this, and the Saints would have a really good, I think, grasp on the division. They play the Bucs in Week 6 after Kansas City. So it's just Atlanta's situation right now kind of reminds me of what the Eagles were facing last week. Just, the second game in Philadelphia's case didn't go their way, but they could easily be 2-0 going into that game. Dennis Allen said it this week. The Falcons could easily be 3-0 on this season. I think they've kind of played well, maybe outside the first game, but they really pushed the Chiefs, and I think Kirk Cousins is coming into a little bit of a groove.
Yeah. Did you get the games mixed up? Don't the Saints have the Bucs next week?
No, Saints have the Chiefs
Chiefs.
Monday night next week.
Chiefs.
Next week?
Yeah.
I got the games mixed up.
Then the funny
the
thing
Bucs
about that
after
is, and this is we're getting ahead of ourselves, but the Bucs have, without a bye, you have the longest. They have a mini bye, and the Saints have a short week. So talking about that Week 6 game is going to be a pretty dramatic rest difference between those teams. So it's funny though, the NFC South, like if you take the Panthers out of it because
They're the Panthers.
Yeah. The big games between the other three teams, every single one of them is in the first 10 weeks of the season, except for Saints at Bucs in Week 18. That's the only one, the only head-to-head meeting between the three teams that doesn't take place basically in the first half of the season. So this division, I'm not going to say it's going to be decided in the first half, but I think you're going to have a clear leader at the end of the first half.
Let's go.
So
I'm excited for that.
That's a good way to start.
I'm also excited for me to learn the schedule.
Yeah, Week 5 at Kansas City, Week 6 Tampa Bay.
Come on, man.
Injuries, I mentioned this, a big deal. I mean, Eric McCoy's on IR. Y'all talked about that a lot in Wednesday's podcast, how the Saints are going to have to rearrange that. Cesar Ruiz also has missed practice twice this week. We're recording, as we always do, Friday morning. We do not have the Friday injury report yet, but Cesar Ruiz didn't practice 2 days. Demario Davis didn't practice 2 days. Alvin Kamara did come back to practice in a limited fashion Thursday. What's the skinny on who y'all think is going to play and who the Saints probably can't count on?
I think Demario may go, and I just think he's a guy that, despite not practicing, if he's just kind of resting up, and he's a guy that's smart enough that they can just kind of put him in there, and he knows what he's doing. He's going to do all the film study, and I just think he might play. I know in the locker room on Thursday, I think somebody asked him you gonna go, and he's like, stay tuned. So I just kind of thought that meant that he might, if he's able to go, he's going to go. I don't expect Ruiz to play, but.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same on that. We've seen Demario actually at practice, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. I remember back when Drew was dealing with his thumb, he was at practice every day, doing his mental reps because he was a football psycho. But I think for Demario's case, it just it signals that maybe he's just trying to stay in it, stay on the game plan, because I agree with you. I think he's one of the very few players on this team that you can legitimately say okay, he's not practicing during the week, but I think it doesn't matter as much for him. Weirdly enough, it was also Talifuaga, which I think says a lot about how they view him. But yeah, Demario, I feel I'm kind of on the fence about, but I'm kind of leaning toward maybe he'd be able to play. Caesar, I don't feel good about. Feel a lot better about Alvin Kamara now that he was back in practice yesterday. Who am I missing here?
Taylor was
Alontae Taylor, yeah,
was an illness.
He was an illness, so you feel good about him.
Yeah.
even if he doesn't.
Yeah, the offensive line, I think, is the primary concern, and we'll dig into that in a minute. On the Falcons side, though, by the way, as you mentioned, they're starting center, blanking on his name.
Drew Dahlman.
Drew Dahlman is on IR as well. Caleb McGarry, their right tackle, has not practiced this week. Bijan Robinson and Matthew Judon both popped up with limited practices yesterday, so we'll see what designation they get today. But the Falcons are not out of the woods here either, so it's kind of an interesting game. And the betting line, by the way, is Falcons minus 2.5. I don't know if we showed that already. So the Falcons are getting kind of the home field edge and not much more here. So, yeah, pretty even game.
Feels right.
Injury concerns, and we'll have our predictions later in the show. But first off, on the offensive line, and this is going to be our transaction segment, which is proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. Saints elevated Shane Lemieux from the practice squad. They signed, Chris Reed, to the practice squad for depth on the offensive line. So Shane Lemieux probably going to be activated. Give me your best guess at a starting 5 across that offensive line, Matt.
Well, assuming Ruiz isn't playing, Fuaga, left tackle, Lucas Patrick at left guard, Shane Lemieux at center, Landon Young at right guard, and then Penning at right, Trevor Penning at right tackle. I thought they were going to go Lucas Patrick at center, but the more I think about it is, last year when James Hurst came back, they kept Andres Pete at left tackle because they felt like he was better there at guard. They didn't want to make 2 spots worse. I think the same logic kind of applies to this in that, all right, you're going to keep Patrick at left guard because that's what he does better than center, and you're just going to try. I think they would be worse with Lemieux at guard and Patrick at center versus maybe you can get by with one of those spots.
Yeah, I think you're right on this, but I also think that to me it's a little bit of a dangerous game because I think Patrick is definitely better than Lemieux at center. I mean, we saw Lemieux really
has never played center before.
We saw him really, really, really struggle playing center in the preseason, especially with snaps. I can't remember which game it was, but there was 4 or 5 bad snaps
in
the game.
Francisco
with Lemieux at center. And then I feel better about the team's guard depth than any other spot on the offensive line.
Right.
They have Landon Young who can play there. They've got Oli Udoh who can play there. They've got Nick Saldiveri who can play there, who's in the mix to be a starter as training camp opened. And then Shane Lemieux's played more at guard than he has at center in his pro career. So it's a little bit, if that is indeed the lineup that we're kind of both expecting because of the reasons you laid out, it's still to me a little bit of a gamble because I think they're more equipped to fill bodies in at guard than they are at center.
Now, if Cesar Ruiz does happen to play, let's say he gets an upgrade in today's practice, and he can go, then Lemieux at center, Patrick stays at guard?
No, I don't think so.
Patrick moves to center, and then you put Landon Young in it at left guard? I mean, what do you think the plan is there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a lot of different ways they could go because maybe they put Cesar at center, which would be weird to do that after he misses a bunch of practice, but maybe that's what they feel best about because I don't know. There's so many. It's going to be really fascinating watching regardless of whether Caesar's questionable, active, out, whatever the case is. It's going to be fascinating watching them in the pregame warmups and how they're dealing with this. And maybe they even do what they did a couple of weeks ago when Fuaga was a game time decision, and they had both him and Landon Young taking first team reps in the pregame warmups. You know, in their little walkthroughs. I think there's a lot of different ways this can go.
And I think if Caesar comes back, though, I mean, I think you kind of go with what you did last week, unless you saw something in Lucas Patrick that you're like, okay, this is not the answer at center. I mean, other than that, I think you would just put Caesar back where he normally is and put Lucas at center like you did last week when Eric McCoy went down. But
right. I think it would be crazy to put him at center, right?
Put Caesar at center.
Yes.
Right.
I think it would be crazy. But I'm not ruling it out as a possibility.
I mean, this line is in bad shape. So, I mean, Yeah, whatever you.
It's in bad shape, but at the same time, they have a lot of options.
That's
It's kind of
options,
weird.
yeah.
And Rod, this is where I was going. Landon Young, he was active last week. He only played one snap. I don't think he was actually fully healthy.
Yeah. I actually asked Dennis Allen about that. It was he was available, but it was more of like an emergency availability, which is why they put Oliudo in.
But they expect to have him kind of in full this week. So in that regard, they do get one body back. Rod, how big of a deal is this? We talked about this on Wednesday, but part of the problem, especially when you lose a center in a game, is you're making adjustments on the fly as far as calling protections, as far as the way he snaps the ball, everything. Can the Saints adjust to this better with a week of practice with however they want to do it?
I mean, I think that definitely helps. I mean, whoever you're going to have at center, I mean, he's got a full week to actually work with Carr and work on all the communication things they need to do. Last week, I mean, you're just kind of throwing a guy out there that's got some backup reps in practice, and that's been about it. So I do think that helps this situation, but I just think, I mean, I've kind of said it all week, but I just think the absence of McCoy is like really big for this team.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's huge. From the communication aspect of it, from the leadership aspect of it, from the sheer talent aspect of it, it's a big deal. But as much as I really like Grady Jarrett and have liked him for a very long time, I think Jalen Carter was a bigger problem than the drop off in play from. I mean, he was on one last week. He was playing like a guy who's many saw as a potential number 1 overall pick.
I don't think
he came out.
He started the year very well.
He did not,
and so I think he kind of.
Yeah, I think they lit a fire under him,
Yeah.
and I think he was ready to go out and show who he was.
It's crazy they lost a guy like Fletcher Cox, and they're still that good on the inside. I mean, it's just pretty incredible.
They drafted him with the pick that the Saints traded to him.
Think about this, and this is just as an aside. The Eagles, probably without A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Lane Johnson this week, and they're still favored at Tampa Bay. That's a good team. I don't know if they're going to win at Tampa Bay, but they're still favored. That's all right. So this is a good way to transition into first part of our breakdown. When the Saints have the ball, we've obviously been talking offensive line. Matt, regardless of those issues, how do you think we see the Saints attack this Falcons defense? Obviously, Clint Kubiak has shown he wants to establish the run. Alvin Kamara's banged up, but it probably still starts there.
Yeah, it would start with the run game. That's what Clint Kubiak has done the first 3 weeks. They stuck with it, even when it wasn't working against Philadelphia. I asked Dennis Allen if he thought that, he talked about wanting to spread the ball out a little bit more, or spreading them out with running. I asked him if he thought they should do that against the Eagles, and he just wasn't really having it. So, what I'm paying attention to this game is how much do they actually adapt in game when things aren't working? Will we be able to tell? It felt like last week against the Eagles, they didn't really make those adjustments in game. But yeah, I think they are going to be better prepared for that 6-1 front if Atlanta tries to do that at all. Foster Moreau was saying how basically when you're in a 6-1 front, it really just comes down to one-on-one matchups because you have the 5 linemen on offense and then your tight end, and really you're just supposed to win the one-on-one. So, that's where it comes down to offensive line depth. But yeah, to answer your original question, I just think they're going to attack kind of the outside. I think they're going to try and avoid Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons at all costs. We saw what Jesse Bates did to Derek Carr last year. It wasn't pretty. I just think they're going to try and attack the edges of this defense rather than avoid the safeties.
And the funny thing about the Falcons going to a 6-1 front is that the strength of their defense is the back 7, so you're kind of taken away from that.
I don't think they will.
It's not the same matchup.
Yeah, I mean, there's like we've discussed on the show. I mean, I think the beauty of what Philly was able to do is that's what they typically play in their base. Right, a five-man front or even a 6. That's like Fangio's done that throughout his career. And B, they've got game wreckers on the inside. Like we just got done talking about Jalen Carter. I mean, he's a guy who disrupted a lot of those plays with his ability. I just don't think Atlanta's got that. I don't think that that's just going to be a solve for teams just to go into this. I mean, we might see it periodically, but I don't think teams can live in this against the Saints, especially now that the Saints have had some time to look back at where things went wrong and come up with better countermeasures for it. I do think that it's going to be really, really important to get Taysom Hill back, and I think this is going to be.
I was just going there.
I think this is going to be the week that that we see what his role is going to be in this Kubiak offense. They were able to hide him the first 2 weeks because they got up to such a big lead so fast. I mean, 30-plus points in the first half of both those weeks. They're able to just kind of like ease off the Taysom Hill accelerator in the second half of games just to not show it. And then obviously he missed last week. I think combining Alvin's huge workload last week with the fact that he's been hurt this week, you don't want to. I don't think you want to give Alvin Kamara 25 carries again this week or close to 30 touches. I think this is the time where you really throw the Taysom Hill stuff in there, especially just considering. I mean, I don't have the numbers, but he has absolutely torched the Falcons in his career. He's averaging like 7 yards a carry against those guys.
Yeah, and he had a big game there last year. So although he did lose a fumble, speaking of those red zone failures last year in Atlanta, that was like the only fumble he'd lost in 2 years there in Atlanta. Rod, how do you grade Derek Carr at this point in the season, and what does he need to show you tomorrow?
I'd give him a B plus. Probably. I think he's done well. I mean, he hadn't had to throw the ball a lot. I mean, how many passes has he thrown this season? I mean, it's
39.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a really low number. So he hadn't really had to do anything.
No, I was
and
wrong.
that goes
Sorry.
back to their ability to run the ball. I mean, that's when they're most successful. Atlanta's a team that doesn't stop the run. I mean, they're like 28th in the league, I think, in run defense. So I think they are going to be able to run. I don't think Derek Carr is going to have to win this game for the Saints. I think it's going to come down to Taysom and what Alvin can do. And, I mean, Carr will have to make some plays every now and then, but I don't think it's going to be a game where Carr needs to go off for 300 yards or anything like that.
Yeah, and you don't want to test the Falcons in the secondary if you can help it. So that's the games that you want to stay out of.
Yeah, A.J. Terrell is also like a phenomenal corner for them.
Yeah.
He's very good.
And their safeties, Bates and Simmons, are maybe the best duo in the league.
So good that the Saints wanted one of them.
I was way off on 39. It was way more than that. It was 64.
It was like 39
I think it was 39 through 2 games. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was kind of low.
But still, 20 a game in today's NFL is not.
No, they're dead last in the NFL in pass attempts.
They have a 60-40 run split. Like
that will
they're
not
actually
keep up.
running. Yeah.
No, of course not. But I do think that to your point, like I will be interested to see if like how the Falcons try to take away the vertical passing game for the Saints. With those two really good safeties back there, and how the Saints choose to attack them. I mean, even last week, they didn't hit on the vertical shots, but they tried them. I'm curious if that's still available this week, knowing you have Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons back there. I don't know if they have to kind of change up how they plan on attacking this team. At the same time, like I feel pretty good about Rashid Shaheed outrunning either of those players, even if they're really smart, really good defensive players. If they can get him just running vertical, where it's just speed on speed, I feel pretty comfortable in Shaheed and those, and Olave.
One note on the Falcons defense before we move on, and they played mobile quarterbacks. They played Justin Fields, and then Jalen Hurts, and then Patrick Mahomes. So take this with a grain of salt. Only 2 sacks. That's 31st in the NFL through 3 weeks. So that's really. I mean, you could look back over the years. It's been the case with Atlanta. I mean, that's why everybody and their mom had them picking Dallas Turner in the draft going into this year, because like they haven't had an impact pass rusher in Atlanta for a long time. And as I mentioned, Matthew Judon limited in practice, so he's probably their best one. We'll see. But a lot's been made of Carr in a clean pocket versus under pressure, and those numbers are real, and so maybe that's a factor in the Saints' favor as well. So before we flip things around, I want to let you know Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. Also ask you to subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We appreciate all of that, and spread the word about the show. Hit the share button, notifications, all that good stuff, and help us continue to grow as we go. All right, flipping things around, when the Falcons have the ball, and I guess I kind of wanted to start here, and the Saints gave up a ton of yardage on Sunday, but they still had the 2 takeaways. They still had the blocked punt. They're second in the NFL with 7 takeaways. And during the offseason, guys, we talked a lot about how that was something that was going to regress for the Saints. You just couldn't expect that defense to continue forcing that many turnovers. And it's only been 3 weeks, but right now, maybe this is just who they are. I mean, they take the ball away.
Yeah, and I don't think it was something that we were saying it was definitely going to regress, but it's just year to year. It's impossible to predict how turnovers are going to play out year to year. But I do think that they've got a lot of guys on this defense who are high awareness type of players, and I do think that they make a concerted effort, basically since Joe Woods got here, since they were atrocious at forcing turnovers in the 2022 season, to make this a consistent part of how they teach defense. The top-down punches in practice, I mean, we saw it in training camp. Every single time somebody got the ball, there's 5 guys around him, and they're all punching at the ball. It's exactly how they teach it. You got guys like Tyrann Mathieu, super heads-up player, and then you add in what I think has been a better pass rush this year, and they've forced some really bad passes from opposing quarterbacks. I mean, those 2 Bryce Young picks in the opener, pressure, right, and forcing bad throws. They totally capitalized on. So yeah, I mean, who knows if this is going to keep up, but I do think that they are a team that A, makes the play on the ball when it's there available to him, and B, does a really good job of actually forcing the issue with the strips especially.
Want to point you in the direction of NOLA.com/Saints. Rod wrote a great column that came out yesterday about Tyrann Mathieu, and part of it is timely because he set a takeaway in 4 straight games going back to last year. Is that right? The game against Atlanta to end last year, and then the first 3 games this year. But what was cool about it, Rod, is that you talked to some of his younger teammates who grew up watching the guy and saying, I modeled my game after this guy. And now they do have a bunch of guys who kind of like to take the ball away. Yeah,
I mean, it just kind of shows that he kind of, I guess, set that tone back in his LSU days. And people are, he's an undersized guy, but he makes plays. And I think these guys, he's the guy that everybody looked up to. I know Ugo Amadi talked about how he actually had his hair blonde and he wore number 7 because of Tyrann. But it just kind of lets you know that the influence that he has in that locker room, and that, I mean, he's respected throughout the league. And he's a guy that, even on that interception, Joe Wood said, I think they were the coverage may have been wrong, but Tyrann read the play, and the pick against the Eagles in the end zone. That Tyrann just read the play, and just he just a smart guy like that.
Yeah. So Tyrann expanded on that yesterday. So what the Eagles normally do on film is they run a post route, but he could tell that they were trying to bait him because he watches so much film. So they're like, all right, we're going to go under this time because we know you watch watch a lot of film, so you're going to expect it back. But he was on to that adjustment and then just sat on the route originally and just picked it off. So he countered their adjustment. It was such a cool quote.
I know you know what I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said on that drive too that they had been picking on him, that Dallas Goedert ran this kind of out and in route. And so that he could just tell that he's all right, this is my drive where they're testing me. So they're going to test me because they know I watch so much film. And he just sat on their adjustment.
He's awesome, man.
It was really, he's such a great.
Tyrann Mathieu has spent a lifetime building up an immunity to iocane powder. Princess Bride reference? Anybody?
Oh my God.
Oh, come on.
No, it's a great movie, but that is a deep cut.
Those who get it are going to appreciate that.
It went so far over my head. Man.
I cannot possibly drink the cup in front of you because it's that. But it's that sort of situation where.
Yeah.
All right, Matt.
I don't think you know what that word means. Another.
Yes.
Another. Yeah. Sorry.
Vizzini. Yeah. Matt.
Yes.
What do you make of Kirk Cousins so far? I thought he looked really bad against Pittsburgh. I thought he's looked better the last 2 weeks. He still doesn't look that comfortable to me.
He doesn't. I think that this offense suits him, though, and I think because he's played in this type of scheme for a long time now, he can kind of rely on the mental side of it. I think that this team this year does a lot better of a job getting the ball to their playmakers' hands, unlike last year with Arthur Smith, which is basically what got him fired. Darnell Mooney has been a really important addition for them. They signed him from Chicago this offseason. He leads them in receiving right now. So I think there's still some health challenges with Kirk Cousins. He's maintained that his foot feels fine, that he's still that the Achilles isn't a problem. But when you can watch the guy, it just doesn't seem like he's planting with kind of that force that he did in the past. But he's played well enough to keep them in these games and to win one of them against the Eagles. So I think, I think of that Rams game last year where they pretty much destroyed the Saints, and they hired Zach Robinson, they being the Falcons, they hired Zach Robinson to be their offensive coordinator. I think there are going to be some things in this game that they scheme these guys open, and Kirk is good enough to deliver on those windows when they're there.
And Rod, they got serious weapons too. I mean, you mentioned Darnell Mooney, but also Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, who was on the injury report. But if those guys all go, Kirk's done a good job spreading the ball around, and like it does look kind of like a little bit of an Eagles offense where you're going to have to account for a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bijan Robinson could present some of the same problems that Saquon presented last week, and he played well against the Saints last year. He had 90-something yards in the first game, rushing. In the second game, he had 103 receiving yards. I mean, so he can kind of hurt you both ways, and like Matt said, I do think they spread the ball around and they do get those playmakers involved. So for me, the key is going to be stopping. I guess we get into keys later, huh?
We do, but you
okay. Yeah, I think just stopping Bijan Robinson is going to be the key. I mean, he played well against the Eagles. He didn't play well against the Chiefs. They shut him down. So I think the Saints are going to have to shut him down to have a shot. If not, it could be a rough day, I think.
One of the things I'm curious about is if this is the game we see Marshawn Lattimore start to travel again. They didn't have him travel last week with Devontae Smith. I don't think he traveled in week one. I don't know who you're going to travel against the Panthers. But I think he is like the best player on this particular defense in defending Drake London, just because he's so physical that Marshawn is. And London's obviously a bigger-bodied receiver, not the same type of player as Mike Evans, the same type of body. So I think, to me, I'll be watching that matchup and see if they have him moving across the field with them, because I feel pretty good about the Saints, even with Darnell Mooney. I feel good about Paulson Adebo or Alontae Taylor on him. I would feel a lot worse about Kyle Pitts if he'd ever done anything in the last couple of years, just because the Saints have had a lot of trouble defending tight ends, but they can't seem to get him going.
He has 100 yards this season. That's I guess in 3 games.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that was an improvement for Kyle Pitts.
Exactly. I mean, he's not as bad as he was last year.
To his last year's total.
But he as a rookie, he had 1,000 yards, and since then it's been. He has not been worth a top 5 pick. He's very much now more of a name player than he is an impact player.
They have taken a couple shots for him that haven't connected, so I'm curious to see. They're trying.
But that's the thing. It's you'd expect a top 5 pick to go make those plays. Yeah, especially if somebody's just physically gifted as him. It just hasn't worked. So I'm not nearly as concerned about Kyle Pitts as maybe I would be for another team with a big fast tight end. That is kind of giving the Saints problems.
I think after seeing the game last week, though, I think the Falcons will try to use Kyle Pitts more. They saw how the Saints struggled against.
Why wouldn't you?
Right.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. The Saints will see that until they stop it. So, interesting matchup on both sides. Quick note on special teams, by the way. I was just noticing this last night. Blake Grupe and Younghoe Koo are 2 of the 5 kickers left in the NFL who are not only perfect on field goals but also have a long of at least 54. So, both off to really good seasons. Of course, Blake Grupe did miss an extra point.
He almost missed.
And he did doink in a 30-yarder last week.
That's true. So some of that shakiness from the preseason, I don't know if it's completely gone with Grupe, but so far it hasn't cost the Saints. So we'll see. All right, we're gonna take our last break. We'll be back with keys to the game and our predictions for Saints Falcons right after this on the Saints Insider.
Nice bike.
Thanks. Can I get it back before Saturday?
That might be tough.
Whoa. Is it just you?
For now, let's take a look.
take that? How about you get it?
All right. Back at the Saints Insider. Appreciate Bank Plus, our sponsor, Associated Grocers, all of them. And now we're going to dig into our keys to the game, Saints versus Falcons. Rod, we'll start with you. You kind of spoiled it, but that's fine. You can give us a second one if you have it. Bijan Robinson, kind of Saquon Barkley light, or the young version of Saquon Barkley. Got to stop him.
Yeah, you got to stop him. And I think that on the opposite side, the Saints have to be able to run the ball. And I know we're saying that every week, but I just think this whole offense depends on it. And this is a week we're really going to, even though the Falcons aren't as good up front with the Saints' issues on the offensive line this week with the, all the reshuffling, I think that's going to be really important to see if they are able to run the ball against the Falcons.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that's helped them the first 2 weeks and hurt them last week. So, Luke?
I'm going to zig a little bit here, and I think for me, I want to see this past game show that it is more than just a compliment to the run game. I think this is a good week to do it because I think maybe if the book is out on the Saints right now and you slow down the run game, you stop the offense. Maybe there's counters to that. They've still got two really, really good receivers out there in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. And we haven't seen much of anything from anybody else yet in this passing game. I think there's opportunities for Juwan Johnson to be more involved. Dennis Allen said this week they want to get him more involved. He is a player who missed essentially all of training camp and the month leading up to it because of an injury. So he's somebody who could, you could see maybe progress a little bit in this offense as the season goes along. I just think if they're able to get that part of their offense going where it's not dependent on the run game and, where it's not dependent on play action and all that stuff, I think they could really be a well-rounded, fun offense this year. I think this is a good week for them to show they can do that.
Matt?
Yeah, I think you got to limit the explosives. That's what really cost them against Philadelphia, that 65-yard run from Saquon, 61-yard catch from Dallas Goedert. That's been a problem for the Saints defense in the past, especially last season, is they just gave up one too many big plays at the wrong time. And I think that also applies for the offense, too. I mean, last year they lost the Falcons game because of that pick six. And so I just think you've got to really limit the big plays, and they've got to show that they can, because that has kind of been their Achilles heel the past few years.
Yeah, the Falcons haven't they haven't just put up a lot of points this season. So, I agree with Matt on that. You have to really
And they hit
them.
Kansas City with some big plays when they scored. I mean,
right.
And that's kind of where I was going. I'll give you two. One is the obvious one, the interior offensive line. Let's see how it holds up, right?
Yep.
With all these moving pieces around. That's if you're getting blown up on the interior, you're in trouble no matter what you do. So that's got to hold up. And then the other one is the red zone. The Saints have been extremely good in the red zone. Derek Carr's been very good in the red zone. I think he's like 5 of 7 for 3 touchdowns, no picks in the red zone. Kirk Cousins also has 3 touchdowns, but it's like he's only like 8 of 14, 8 of 15 maybe. His completion percentage is not very good. The Falcons are 25th in the league, 44% touchdowns on their red zone trips. That could really decide this game, and especially given the backdrop of how much the Saints struggled at Mercedes-Benz Stadium last year in the red zone. If they were good in the red zone, they'd have won this game, that game. So.
Yeah, and the Saints defense has been excellent in the red zone this season.
Yeah,
they've only allowed 2 red zone touchdowns, I think, in like 9 or 10 trips. So they're really good there.
Yeah, if Cousins is like barely over 50% in the red zone, that's where that space gets tight, and that's where the Saints are really good at that. Could be difficult for the Falcons. So, all right, time for our predictions here on the Saints Insider. As we mentioned at the top of the show, Falcons 55, Saints 55 is the all-time series. Jeff Duncan, who's not here, passed along the note that if the Saints were to win on Sunday, it would be the first time they lead in the all-time series since the very first game. And they beat the Falcons the very first time they played them in 1967, led 1-0. They have not led the all-time series since then. But if they can win on Sunday, they'll get up 56-55.
That was Jeff's first game, too. So.
Jeff was already an old head at that time. Jeff's pick, we're going to start with him. He does think the Saints go up by 1 in the all-time series with a 1-point victory. He's got 21-20 Saints So he's going small upset. Saints get to 3-1. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Rod Walker.
I picked the Saints, and I didn't. I picked the Falcons to win. If this game was in New Orleans, I would pick the Saints to win. But I just feel like that home field is going to play a little bit of a role, and I do think. I think that you look at the Falcons, who they've played. I mean, they played the Steelers, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. I mean, that's three really, really good teams.
The only loss for any of those teams is to the Falcons. They're
Right,
8-1. Yeah.
Right. And I just think, so I think they'll be ready for this game, and I just feel like I think Bijan Robinson's going to have a big day, and so I picked the Falcons to win. I think 27-24.
27-24 is what you have. And I'm glad you mentioned that. The Falcons have played a really difficult schedule and looked okay. You know, like we said, they could be, I don't know if you give them that Steelers game, but they could be 3-0, you know, without changing too much.
Yeah, but I've played a lot of those games with the Saints the last couple of years. At the same time, they've lost all three. They've lost two of those games. Even if they're really tough opponents and everything like that, it's just you can't play the we played them close game in the NFL because it's something like they could lose this week and then they're just a bad team.
Well, they almost lost to the Eagles too.
Yeah.
I mean,
With them playing the Bucs, they turn around and play the Bucs on Thursday, like Matt mentioned earlier. I mean, I think for the Falcons, I think they have to get one of these two games, and I think this is the one that they're really going to do.
Yeah, they're going to go after it, especially at home.
Yeah.
I do have the Saints winning. I got 21-16. I'm kind of playing off of that red zone I said. Falcons settle for some field goals. Saints finish some drives. Could be the difference, 21-16.
Yeah, I picked the Saints too in this one. I've got them 23-21. And I feel absolutely terrible about this. Like I was dreading this
It's a hard
all
game
week.
to pick, man.
It is not a surprise to me at all that it's a 2.5 point spread for the home team, where it's basically like a pick'em game, right? Just because this is really tough. I could really legitimately see either two teams winning. I just think the Saints are a little bit closer to the team they showed in weeks 1 and 2 than they are to the team they were last week, offensively in particular. So I think this defense is still good enough to slow down those Atlanta playmakers to make the plays when it counts, and I think the offense gets back on track a little bit, but still one of those tight, eke it out division games.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tight. Matt?
Yeah, I would agree that I think I was the last one to submit my prediction in the group chat and then also our story, and it's because I went back and forth, but I had the Falcons 24, Saints 21. I kind of just went back to, Rod, you hit on this in the actual story, but our preseason predictions, what are they going in? Like, I picked Atlanta to win this game months ago. I think I'm going to just stick with that. Just because, like, I think the scheme could give New Orleans trouble, and we talked about the offensive line, but I just think that's going to be a problem for the Saints, and Atlanta just really needs this game. I think it's like a desperation thing, and so I just have the Falcons barely.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for the Saints for sure. I guess we got 3 Saints picks and 2 Falcons picks, so we don't think it's too much for the Saints to overcome. I mean, it feels like one of those close division games. It feels like, it's week 4. It's nobody's talking about must win yet, but it's like it's one of those games at the end of the year. The good teams found a way to win, and the teams that fell short didn't. And that may be what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Do we all have it within a 3-point game?
I believe that is
Except for Zach.
I have 5. I have the Saints by 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Homer.
the outlier. Yeah. Just wait till next week. That's a look ahead to next week. Just wait till Kansas City, baby. All right, that's going to do it for our show. We will have a post-game show for you on Sunday. These 3 gentlemen are going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But by the way, having said this, our best wishes for the city of Atlanta. I think they're probably getting Hurricane Helene or the remnants of it right about now. So we hope everything goes well there. I know there's been some flooding and things like that. Doesn't look like it's going to affect Sunday's game, but did want to throw that out there. These 3 guys will be in Atlanta. Jeff Duncan and I will kick up the post-game show 15, 20 minutes after the game ends, and then Rod, Luke, and Matt will join us as they can. For our producer, Amelia Cotton, he's Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris, and we'll see you next time on the Saints Insider.